It's minus 15 outside. The furnace hasn't kicked on in 2 hours. And yet, this room is warm. Not comfortable enough warm. Actually warm. That's coming from this. A wooden box mounted on the south wall, full of aluminum cans painted black. No electricity, no fuel, no moving parts. The sun is doing the work the same way it's been doing it all day. And it'll keep doing it until the light goes. It cost me $8 to build. I'm not going to tell you this is some brand new invention nobody's heard of. It's been in off-grid and DIY communities for over 40 years. People have been building these on sheds, cabins, garages, and south-facing walls across Canada and the northern United States since the 1980s. The reason it never went mainstream is honestly pretty simple. Nobody profits from sunlight. The heating and cooling industry generates $240 billion a year, selling you equipment and fuel to condition air. A box of recycled cans that does a meaningful piece of the same job for $8 is not something that industry has any incentive to help you discover. So let me just show you how to build one. You already know how this works. You've seen it your whole life. That's why you crack a car window on a sunny winter day and come back to a warm interior, even when it's below freezing outside. That's why a greenhouse stays warm in February with no heat source. That's why a black metal surface in the sun gets hot enough to burn your hand when the air temperature is barely above zero. Dark surfaces absorb solar radiation and convert it to heat. What you're building is a way to capture that heat and move it into a room instead of letting it radiate back into the sky. Cold air enters at the bottom. It flows through a column of black aluminum cans the sun has been heating all day. It exits at the top, warm. That warm air rises into the room. Room air cools, drops, cycles back into the bottom of the collector. No fan, no pump, no electricity, pure convection. And the same physics that makes heat rise above a campfire, except now it's doing something useful. And here's the number that stopped me when I first came across this. A 3x6 foot collector built by engineering students at the University of Washington produced 2,246 BTU per hour on a sunny day. Industry standard says it takes about 5,000 BTU to heat a 125 square foot room. That one box, on its own, covered nearly half of that. $8 of materials and a Saturday afternoon. Here's the parts list. And this is genuinely it. Aluminum cans. As many as you can collect. For a 3x4 foot collector, you need roughly 100 to 140 cans. Start saving them now, or ask a neighbor, a bar, a restaurant. They're throwing them away by the bag. Free. A wooden frame. 1x6 lumber to build a shallow box. Roughly 5 to 6 inches deep, the size of your collector panel. Scrap lumber works fine. $2 to $4 if you're buying new. Black spray. Paint. Flat, matte, not glossy. Flat black absorbs the most solar radiation. $2. Silicone caulk or construction adhesive to connect the cans end to end into columns. One tube, $2. A sheet of clear polycarbonate or plexiglass to glaze the front. The greenhouse layer that lets sunlight in and traps the heat inside. A piece cut to your frame size runs $4 to $6, or free if you have an old storm window lying around. Weather stripping to seal the edges, $1. That's it. $8 if you're scrounging well. $15 on the outside if you buy everything new. The cans are free. That's where most of the savings live. Here's how it goes together. Clean and dry the cans completely. Cut the tops and bottoms off each one using a can opener so they become open cylinders. Stack them end to end in columns using silicone or construction adhesive, tall enough to span the interior height of your frame. Let the adhesive cure overnight. Spray the entire assembly. Cans, interior walls, everything. With flat black paint, 2 thin coats, maximum absorption across every surface. Mount the can columns vertically inside the frame, side by side. Cut 2 openings in the frame, one at the bottom for cold air intake, one at the top for warm air output. About 4 inches in diameter, or a slot the width of 2 cans, works well for a collector this size. Fix the polycarbonate sheet across the front face of the box. Seal every edge with weather stripping. You're building a small greenhouse, sunlight in, heat trapped, warm air channeled out the top. Mount the finished collector on a south-facing wall, angled at roughly your latitude plus 10 degrees for best winter performance. Connect the intake hole to a low opening through the wall. Connect the output to a high opening, seal around both. Done. On a sunny day, put your hand over the output hole. That's what free heat feels like. Now here's the part most people don't know about. The hack within. The hack. Pure convection works. But adding one small component turns this into a significantly more powerful system without adding any complexity or cost to speak of. A small DC computer fan, the kind pulled from an old desktop tower or bought for $2 or $3 at a thrift store or electronic surplus shop, connected to an equally small solar panel wired directly to it. No battery, no controller, no wiring beyond the 2 leads. The fan spins when the sun shines and stops when it doesn't. That's it. That's the whole system. What it does is increase the airflow through the collector dramatically, pushing more warm air into the room per hour, and dropping the temperature inside the collector box, which actually improves efficiency. The heating and cooling engineering principle is straightforward. A collector running at a moderate temperature with high airflow delivers more usable heat than a collector running very hot with low airflow, because the hotter the box gets, the more heat it loses back through the glazing. Moving the air faster keeps the box cooler and the room warmer. A 4-watt solar panel to drive the fan costs about $3 to $5 and sits right on top of the collector frame. The sun powers the heat collection and the air delivery simultaneously. When the sun goes down, the fan stops. No override required. The system shuts itself off. Total upgrade cost, $5 in 20 minutes. Here's the one thing people get wrong when they first build this. They don't seal the box. Any gap where warm air escapes back out the sides or through the glazing is heat lost. Silicone every seam, foam every edge. The collector generates heat continuously while the sun shines. The only question is whether that heat goes into your room or back into the sky. Sealing is 15 minutes of work that determines most of your output. And here's something worth knowing for anyone in a northern climate. When the sun goes down and outdoor temperatures drop well below the room temperature, air can reverse flow through the collector. Cold air in through the top, cold air out through the bottom. The fix is a lightweight plastic flap over the interior openings, a piece of thin plastic film, slightly larger than the opening, that hangs freely and opens with outward airflow but closes against backflow, free from any plastic bag. Install it before the first cold night. Now let me show you what this looks like at real scale. Gary Reza spent his career as an engineer at Boeing Aircraft. When he retired to Montana, he had cold winters, a large unheated workshop, and the kind of engineering mind that doesn't pay for something he can build. He designed and built a solar can heater for his workshop, documented everything, temperature readings, airflow measurements, thermal images, and published the full results on his website, builditsolar.com, which has become one of the most referenced DIY solar documentation sites in North America. His results, recorded under typical Montana winter conditions, a 50 to 60 degree Fahrenheit temperature rise between the lower intake and the upper outlet, peak output of 25,000 BTU per hour, total daily heat gain of approximately 130,000 BTU, the equivalent of burning about 2 gallons of propane at 70% efficiency every clear winter day, for free. His workshop typically cools to 8 to 15 degrees above outside temperature overnight. On a clear day, the collector brings it up to working temperature in about 3 hours. He documents that the heat output per square foot compares favorably to most commercial solar collectors, at less than 1/10 the cost. He hasn't needed a backup heater. That's a retired Boeing engineer with decades of technical experience in one of the colder parts of the continental United States, documenting what an aluminum can heater does in real winter conditions. Not a theory, not a YouTube demonstration. Measured data, published, and still freely available. The thing about this that stays with me is how obvious it is once you see it. You already own the cans. The sun is already hitting your south wall every clear day from October to March. The heat is already being generated and already being wasted, radiating off the siding and disappearing into the air. Every winter day that passes without a collector on that wall is a day of free heat you didn't collect. Passive solar heating principles were formally documented by engineers in the 1970s during the energy crisis, and then quietly shelved when oil prices dropped and the urgency passed. The physics didn't change. The sun didn't change. The south wall of your house didn't change. And the heating and cooling industry kept selling you fuel and equipment, and nobody put a box of black painted cans on a hardware store shelf, because there's no margin in it. $8. One Saturday. And it starts working the first clear day after you mount it. I don't know what your situation is or why you're watching this. Maybe your heating bill has been climbing and you want something real you can actually do. Maybe you're building a cabin or a workshop that isn't on the grid. Maybe you're the kind of person who likes knowing how things work and you found this at 2 a.m. because you were curious. It doesn't matter. It works either way. Now you know how. Take care and see you in the next one.